The afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the busy downtown street. Thomas Henderson stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. Just moments ago, his 4-year-old daughter Emma had been right beside him. Now she was nowhere to be seen. Thomas was a successful man by most measures. At 42, he had built a thriving real estate company from the ground up. But none of that mattered now. In this moment, he was simply a terrified father who had lost sight of his little girl. He had been distracted for only a second. One phone call from the office, one glance at his watch. That was all it took. "Emma!" he called out, his voice tight with panic. "Emma, sweetheart." The sidewalk was crowded with Saturday shoppers. Families strolled past boutique windows. Couples sat at outdoor cafes. But nowhere could he see his daughter's small frame or her favorite white floral dress. Thomas's mind raced to dark places. Every parent's worst nightmare flashed before his eyes. He pulled out his phone, ready to call the police when he heard it. A child's laughter, Emma's laughter. He turned toward the sound and felt his knees nearly buckle with relief. There she was, his Emma standing just 50 feet away near a storefront, and kneeling beside her was a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s. She had long, wavy blonde hair that caught the sunlight, and she wore a simple cream blouse and tan shorts. In her hands, she held what appeared to be a small pink object, showing it to Emma with a gentle smile. Thomas rushed forward, his relief quickly mixing with something else. Suspicion, wariness. In his world, you learned to be careful. You learned that not everyone could be trusted. But as he approached, he slowed his steps. The scene before him was not what he expected. The young woman wasn't trying to lead Emma away. She wasn't looking around nervously or speaking in hushed tones. Instead, she was simply talking, listening, treating his daughter with the kind of patient attention that seemed rare in the world these days. "And you see," the woman was saying softly, "when you feel scared or lost, it's always best to stay right where you are. That way, the people who love you can find you more easily." Emma nodded solemnly, her small hand wrapped around the woman's fingers. Thomas cleared his throat. Both Emma and the woman looked up. "Daddy!" Emma's face lit up and she ran to him. Thomas scooped her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "Oh, sweetheart," he breathed. "You scared me so much." "I'm sorry, Daddy," Emma said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I saw a pretty butterfly and I followed it. But then I couldn't find you." Thomas looked over Emma's head at the young woman who had risen to her feet. She stood quietly, a soft smile on her face, clearly preparing to slip away now that the reunion was complete. "Wait," Thomas said. "Please, I need to thank you." The woman shook her head. "There's no need. I'm just glad she's safe. But you stayed with her. You kept her calm." Thomas set Emma down but kept his hand on her shoulder. "In a world where people usually just walk by, you stopped." The woman's expression grew thoughtful. "My grandmother used to tell me something," she said quietly. "She'd say that kindness isn't about grand gestures or expecting recognition. It's about doing what's right in the small moments when no one might ever know or remember." Thomas studied her face. There was something in her eyes, a depth, a sadness perhaps mixed with wisdom beyond her years. "What's your name?" he asked. "Claire," she replied. "Claire Morrison. I'm Thomas. Thomas Henderson. And this is my daughter, Emma." Claire knelt down again, bringing herself to Emma's eye level. "Emma, you're a very brave girl. And very smart to know not to go with strangers. You listened to what your daddy taught you, didn't you?" Emma nodded. "Daddy says I should never go anywhere with someone I don't know." "Your daddy is absolutely right," Claire said warmly. "That's why I stayed right here with you. So we could wait together until he found us." Thomas felt something shift in his chest. For the past 3 years, since his wife Catherine had passed away from cancer, he had built walls around himself and Emma. He had learned to be cautious, protective, sometimes overly so. He had stopped believing that people could simply be kind without wanting something in return. But here was this young woman, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. "Claire," he said slowly, "would you join us for coffee? Or perhaps lunch? I know it's an unusual request, but I'd like to properly thank you. And honestly," He paused, searching for the right words. I'd like Emma to see that there are good people in the world, that kindness still exists. Claire hesitated. For a moment, Thomas thought she would decline, but then she looked at Emma, who was gazing up at her with those wide, trusting eyes that only children possess. All right, Claire said softly, just for a little while. They walked together to a small cafe 2 doors down. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh-baked bread drifting from the kitchen. They settled into a booth by the window, Emma between them, already coloring on the paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought. As they talked over coffee and lemonade, Thomas learned that Claire worked as a kindergarten teacher, that she had grown up in a small town about an hour away, that she loved reading to children and believed in the power of patience and gentle words. Why teaching? Thomas asked. Claire's expression grew distant. My younger brother had special needs, she said quietly. He struggled in school. But there was one teacher who never gave up on him, who saw past the challenges to the beautiful soul underneath. She changed his life. And mine? Where's your brother now? He passed away 2 years ago, Claire said, her voice steady but soft. A heart condition we didn't know about. He was only 23. Thomas felt his throat tighten. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Claire said. I think that's why I stopped when I saw Emma looking confused and scared. I remember how vulnerable my brother was, how much he needed people to be kind, to be patient, to see him as a person, not a problem. Emma looked up from her coloring. I think you're nice, she announced. Claire smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Thank you, Emma. I think you're wonderful. They talked for over an hour. About life, about loss, about the strange ways grief changes us, sometimes hardening us, sometimes opening us to deeper compassion. Thomas found himself sharing things he rarely spoke about. How lonely the past 3 years had been. How he sometimes felt he was failing Emma by working so much. How he missed having someone to share the small moments with, the way Emma pronounced certain words, the questions she asked, the wonder she still found in simple things. You're not failing her, Claire said gently. Look at her. She's confident. She's happy. She knows she's loved. That's not failure, Thomas. That's everything. As the afternoon wore on, Emma grew sleepy. She climbed into Thomas's lap and rested her head against his chest. We should go, Thomas said reluctantly. But Claire, I'd like to see you again, if you're comfortable with that. Just as... He stumbled over his words, suddenly unsure. Claire reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. As friends, she said simply. I'd like that. They exchanged phone numbers. As they prepared to leave, Claire bent down one more time to Emma, who was rubbing her eyes sleepily. Emma, Claire whispered, just loud enough for Thomas to hear. You have the most wonderful daddy in the world. Don't ever forget that. And remember, whenever you feel lost or scared, the people who love you will always find you. Always. Emma threw her small arms around Claire's neck. I love you, she said with the easy honesty of childhood. Claire's eyes glistened. I love you too, sweet girl. Thomas watched this exchange, and something inside him that had been frozen for 3 years began to thaw. As they walked away, Emma's hand in his, Thomas turned back one more time. Claire still stood outside the cafe, waving. The golden afternoon light surrounded her like a gentle embrace. In that moment, Thomas understood something he had forgotten, that sometimes grace arrives in unexpected forms, that sometimes the people we need most appear precisely when we've stopped looking for them. That kindness, real, selfless kindness, still exists in the world. He waved back, and in his heart, he whispered a thank you, not just for finding Emma, but for reminding him that walls, while protective, can also keep out the light. That evening, as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked, Daddy, will we see Miss Claire again? I hope so, sweetheart, Thomas said, kissing her forehead. I really hope so. Through the window, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. And for the first time in a long time, Thomas felt something stirring in his chest that felt remarkably like hope. Sometimes, he thought, the most profound moments in life are the quietest ones. A stranger's gentle words, a child's trust, a reminder that we're never as alone as we think we are. And sometimes, just sometimes, being lost is the only way we can be found.